The window of opportunity is closing, my friends, so we sail on as we must. Time is not infinite, at least not for us, so we have to do what we can in the time that is allotted to us. Artist Journal, February 5th, 2024. My first words in the morning to you, my friend, broadcasting from deep within the nervous system, somewhere between the cerebellum and the cerebral cortex, coffeeed up. My name's Adrian Pocobelli, and welcome back. Let's see if the computer plays nice and is not too choppy today. So again, welcome back. A ton to do here. So let's begin, and I hope you all had a wonderful weekend, and thank you again for the support, which is amazing. It is just simply amazing. The comments, the retweets, the YouTube comments, it continues to grow. So very, very exciting here, and a lot of exciting things coming up, actually. So let's get into it here. Karim Safa put out these two very interesting works here, part of a series, Abstructure 4, and the series is called Obstructures, and putting out these two recent works here, and we're going to come back to them in a second. Quite a beautiful series, though, going back one of ones of these beautiful, fairly straightforward. Actually, they're straightforward is not the word, not at all, as we're going to see. But simple concept here, as we're going to see. So this is the early one, and it goes all the way back to 2022, is what I wanted to show you first of all. So these are the two earlier ones. Quite fascinating. And as it says here on the series, Abstructures is a series of minimalist pixel artworks created using RGB colors. So red, green, and blue, blending stylized architectural and natural elements to form abstract structures. So what we're seeing here is a kind of abstract, semi-abstract, because it's using architectural structures, pixel art. Is it not what we're seeing here? And interestingly, not, as pixel art is, you don't need to make these files huge. So this is 216 by 216 by 5. The third part here, meaning magnified by 5. This seems to be the standard that is happening here in terms of describing, pixel art being magnified. And of course, because if you put it at 216, that'd be a little smaller than a Google ad here. However, again, I'm kind of back to, when I see small file sizes like that, I'm back to ordinals. And it does make you, again, crosses my mind here, like, what if this was put on ordinals? I mean, how big is this file? That's kind of an interesting question. Properties. I don't see the size here, but something to consider here. Yeah, I don't see the size, I don't think. No. Okay, so let's continue on here, though, but I will look up the size at some point. But let's take a closer look here. You know what this reminds me of, first of all? This kind of semi-abstract pixel art work done by a fairly, I'd say, the pioneer, arguably, if not for sure, of the pixel art factory trope, for lack of a better term, or way of doing things. These kind of pixel art, factories that have pixels moving all around. We've looked at Karim Safa's work before. If you're kind of paying attention somewhat on the digital art scene, say within the crypto sphere, you've probably come across Karim Safa's pixel art factories. They're very kind of, head turning, so to speak, and impressive, often in black and white. So here, again, we're with RGB, red, green, blue. So an interesting limitation here. And again, what this reminds me of, weirdly, is, I would say, like a medieval painting of a town. Like, it's kind of got that same kind of weird architectural dynamic, for lack of better terms. Let's look at the other one. This one, not as much. This is kind of more of this almost looks more like something between a temple and a Frank Lloyd Wright home somewhere that you'd kind of walk into. It's almost like somewhere, this is a cross between, again, like the tree on top, you almost think like a designer again, kind of Frank Lloyd Wright, architecture. Over here, you kind of feel like you're walking into an Egyptian temple. So a little bit of everything. But this other one, going back to this, and maybe you see it now, again, somewhat evokes medieval painting of a city, like that medieval perspective. And so, again, what do we see here? We see dithering here. And we also see, and we don't see a ton of it in this one, but we do see some variation, you might say, in the, what I would argue, for lack of a better term, since we're kind of, again, we're sailing forward into the unknown here, a different kind of pixel styling, for lack of a better term. Here we see like the horizontal pixel styling. And over here, I mean, you see a whole other kind of styling, which you might even call solid pixel styling. Here you see 2, 2, 2, 2 as a kind of patterning. So we're seeing different kinds of pixel patterning here. This blue here, interestingly, kind of evokes a waterfall seemingly, especially here, and then maybe it stops and then it continues, and then it goes into more patterning, interestingly. So just a very interesting work, and I thought worthwhile to start the newspaper of the imagination. Again, water, evoking water over here, as it seems to separate in space as it gets lower here. So there does seem to be a water theme here. And maybe more importantly, at least for me, as I zoom out here, a kind of, it feels new to a certain degree. This isn't the first time someone has tried to make a serious abstract work with pixel art. Surely not. We've seen several in the past. However, this does feel like a real, what I would say, a pretty serious attempt, a pretty ambitious attempt at saying, especially, like, the reason minimalism often gets conflated with concept art is because with minimalism, you kind of have it has to be built along very specific ideas or rules. And so when I see this, very interesting RGB limitation, a screen coloring limitation, when I see even the pixel art and just saying, okay, I'm going to work with a bunch of squares and see what happens. Again, this dithering looks kind of manual, one could argue. It feels like it has that kind of minimalist, conceptual sheen, kind of shine on it, which kind of gives it it's almost like the limitations and the rules here seem to give it a kind of importance. Significance is maybe a better way of putting it, that really grabs you, is what I'm trying to say here. So this is cool, interesting. And again, with minimalism, of course, every detail matters, right? Everything is significant. It's kind of like I was going to say it's the opposite of paint drops, but that's an overgeneralization. But everything matters with minimalism, one could argue, because you're dealing with few elements, including the title, abstructure. So a new word, perhaps, likely concocted by Karim Safa here. So again, a series of minimalist pixel artworks created using RGB colors, blending stylized, architectural, and natural elements to form abstract structures. So again, kind of using representational structures to form abstractions. Let's take a quick look at our Frank Lloyd Wright Egyptian temple here. Abstructure 3, and actually, let's just see what this sold for. Selling for 100 Tezos, pretty good deal, actually, for a Karim Safa at auction. And here, this selling to Bijou gets a deal here at 60 Tezos. And so this one was also quite interesting in its variation in the pixelation patterning over here. So as you see here, kind of chaotic and almost kind of a little abstract work in itself over here. And all of these little, again, it feels like an architectural structure, but in the picture plane here, in this two-dimensional surface, you don't need to worry about things necessarily quote unquote, making sense on a spatial level, on an engineering level. So again, finally, and again, you see the pixels here that are put together, like it's the horizontal pixel style, for lack of a better term, that we see in the tree, but here it's doubled up. So again, playing with these squares with what I would say with a hat tip to early computer or dithering art, as we see here, like influenced by dithering, but not limited by it. In a sense, again, it doesn't seem to be using here like a gradient tool, like a pixel art gradient tool that you might find, which is pretty convenient sometimes. This feels very manual, and again, it evokes this dithering, but it is, you could argue, dithering over here in the bottom right here. But nevertheless, it feels like something other to a certain degree here. And as you see, the vertical lines here. So just very interesting work. And the tree, this strange tree at the top of this structure here. So just really interesting work from Karim Safa to get us started here. And just a quick look here at these older works. So giving life to a series that Karim hadn't worked on, or at least hadn't released a work on since 2022. So a couple of years ago, or maybe a year and a half. This one has a bit more of a three-dimensional feel to it. Interestingly, this is Abstructure 1. And here we have another one. And again, playing again with these, because again, like what I'm trying to verbalize here, what I'm trying to language as I look at this is again, it's taking a minimalist, conceptual, arguably, approach to pixel art abstraction with this unit of the square being its central tool, for lack of a better term, or iteration, or expression. Its central mode of expression, and then using that, because as anybody that's actually worked on these things, say on pixel art, often the temptation is, okay, you have your canvas as a grid, but then to double up where the squares are twice as big, it starts to get counterintuitive. And so again, it looks, there's something that's really just interesting about this series that stands out in the detail, as one would expect in a nicely executed minimalist artwork. So that is 2000 Tezos, by the way, on primary. Is that on primary or secondary? This sold for 169 and play. So on secondary, it is now going for 2000 Tezos. So very interesting release there. Interesting drop from Karim Safa. So continuing on here, let's run. Ran Exterior on digital art, abstraction, and AI. So this should be great. So Ran Exterior, of course, we've seen a ton of her work. She's collaborated a lot with Kiro, MCHX, and also has, a lot of work on Object, which is, I'd say, kind of, in a weird way, kind of similar in that it's kind of representational, but kind of abstract. So we'll talk about that, and has also worked with AI as far as with MCHX. So it should be a great discussion. Runtune is back from Asia, back from Vietnam and Thailand. So I can't wait to hear about that just as much as anything there. But it should be a good show, and looking forward to it. That's this Wednesday. Comments here. Modem MT, I really appreciate your review. Adrian, thank you for displaying so many incredible pieces. You're welcome, Moda. Great piece there the other day. A moving work. Rosacho, love it. Glad you found the Big Mo. Yeah, crucial. And I have to say, I'm absolutely loving the new schedule here of the Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I'm going to try it again. No rules over here. Tom Bombattle, nice works, thank you. And Rorich, great to hear from you. Long-time collector. One of the first people to actually reach out to me in this scene when I started buying works on Object. Really cool person, I believe based out of North Dakota, which is not far from where I'm from, in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan there. So big shout out to Rorich. And Ilya Jura, keep doing it. Huge love. Thank you, Ilya. Will do. Will do. And thank you for the comment. And Manadal, happy Friday to you. And I hope you had a wonderful weekend, Manadal. And we have a work by you in this, a beautiful work by you in this show. And just a few more comments here. LA Low, thank you, Adrian. Next time I'll render a light 480 by 480 version. So I was having internet problems there in case you decide to mention me. Of course I will. I think I've mentioned LA Low probably like 30 times in different shows there. Really interesting artist that, again, would just fit very nicely in Contemporary Art Gallery there. You wouldn't think twice if you saw the work there, let's put it that way, at least as far as I'm concerned. CECHK, I love the Artist Journal, amazing artworks, thank you, cheers. Wasteman Goldminovich, great to hear from you. Cloak, great to hear from you. Rat Cloak, who of course made this brilliant work of art here on that we started with. And Kells, wow, hit this one out of the park. Thank you. Excellent stuff start to finish. Thanks for all the inspiration. Well, great to hear, Kells. Thank you for that. And Matthias, Matthias Morano, who made those beautiful artworks that sell for a fortune and the 3 different variations. Your art and your support are from another planet. Well, many thanks, Matthias. Really nice to hear from you. This is great. Iris Deleuze, great recommendations. Morano is one of the best. This guy right here. That is hilarious. Little Cakes, I really enjoyed hearing your personal analysis of the Rat Cloak piece in the intro. Well, glad to hear, and we have some work by Little Cakes here too. Denise, thank you. I love your vibe and the time you invest in the show to the world, to show the world so many talented artists. And it is a global show, which is incredibly exciting. So thank you, Denise, and I appreciate the good vibes back. That stuff matters. King Joffrey, great show, and great insights from Gogolitis about Object.com being a brilliant website as the supreme interface. I really noticed the difference in the notifications feed and the quick access to history, owners, activity. No need to jump over to the metadata page like other marketplaces. So true. Exactly. It's like noticing, when something's done right, this is why being a designer is such a difficult job, I would argue, because when you hand in something perfect, it just works and it looks like it should, and people go, yeah, of course that's how it's supposed to be. But if you hand in a 90% job, then people, oh, there's problems. And all to say, I say that because Object kind of handed in, as I was calling it, kind of like a perfect update. I mean, sure, little tweaks here and there, but overall, I'd say philosophically, from a design perspective, it was a brilliant update. And so it's and why I say that is because why I'm saying the story about it being 100% is because it's really easy to overlook a perfect update because it just makes sense and it doesn't cause you problems. So it's kind of it's easily taken for granted, which is why it's so hard to be a designer, I would argue. Having done that for 4 years, it's a tough job. And it's not as easy as people, think making something beautiful. It takes a lot of work and understanding, and frankly, a lot of design philosophy. A lot of philosophy in design, like a ton. It's really an appreciated, work. It's really underappreciated work. So anyway, big shout out to Object and to King Joffrey for noticing. Sahar, thank you for the comment. And Juan, how beautiful to see so many colleagues together. Indeed, the wonder of the internet and this tabbing structure here of this newspaper of sorts of the imagination, not a news channel, of course. Unknown Collector. So this kind of made some waves here. So this Botto project here, and of course, actually, I may not follow Botto project. Let's make sure. But if it looks like I'm not following people, that is a X glitch. When I load up, 50 tabs here, it doesn't always show. So here, the reactions to the Botto project sale show that even a big part of the community of artists just consumes images and not engages with art here. So let me show you the work in question, which was making some waves here. So here's what it sold for, $95,000, 41 ETH for this work here. And let me just show it to you for a second. We'll come back to this. So an AI artwork here. And so the passing, so getting a lot of flack, taking a lot of flack in the comments and people not being impressed with this work and then going, what's going on here? This just sold for $95,000. What's going on? So Unknown Collector, instead of getting curious why that image sells for so much and start to research, there is just immediate hate. Sometimes the outcome still will be that it's overly hyped, but sometimes not. Part of the reason we are all here part of the reason why we're always so frustrated is that no one cares about the art, but do you care about the art or do you just scroll through pretty images? So it's bringing up a deep issue here, which is the tension between, you might say, the concept of a work of art and its aesthetics, and kind of where one starts and where one ends. And it kind of brings you back to Duchamp, doesn't it? To a certain degree. This latrine. Is this latrine art, right? Put on its side, and then called the fountain, right? Is that art? And so the beauty of the idea, right? And so this kind of tension that's existed at least since Duchamp, maybe even before, but I think Duchamp we could call the breakaway part, like where the time in history where we saw a break, I think we could say, in concept art, where it was about the beauty of the idea, right? And I think we're kind of seeing a little bit about that here as Unknown Collectors saying, is it just about the prettiness of the image? And as I've long said here, we're not just interested in making pretty images here. In that sense, that's what a designer can do that. If you're an artist, you're adding a poetic element, or at least some kind of... There is a beauty involved, though I might just add here. It's just the idea. It's just that the beauty, the aesthetic, it's not that aesthetics disappear. It's that the aesthetic, the argument could be made, say, let's use Duchamp, is the beauty has transferred from the object itself, the manifestation of the idea, to the idea. And where it's saying, it's just pointing at this thing as art on its side and saying, hey, we're taking a found object, right? A ready-made, and we're going to call it art, and for all of these, philosophical reasons. And it's worthwhile, and maybe there's a joke, maybe it's kind of double-sided, maybe there's an ambiguity. Should we call it art, even from the artist's point of view? Right, so let's just finish here. It's not only the fault of collectors or curators to enhance the discourse of art and not just to commodify art. Everyone needs to do better. We're a community. Engage with the art, think about the art, don't just consume it inactively. We can make a difference together. So again, going for 95, causing a little bit of controversy, and to Unknown Collectors' point, I actually brought up the website here. Because so how does it work, right? How was that artwork made? It was AI artwork. Botto is a decentralized, autonomous artist. So, as it says here on their website, Botto creates works of art based on collective feedback from the community. So, a kind of, art by committee, you could argue, right? Which is a pretty controversial kind of, doesn't sound like it's going to end well. What's interesting is it's got mixed results, I would say. Art participation is what completes Botto as an artist. Now, this is the concept, right? And together we are defining a new genre of art. Again, this, which I think we could say is a kind of art by committee of sorts. So an interesting experiment here. And they have a crypto. So if you want to be a part of the Botto DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, as far as I understand, and I'm not advocating, this is again not financial advice, but just to show you how it works, you can buy a Botto token, or you can buy several Botto tokens, and maybe you have more of a say. And here, here's the dashboard, and you connect your crypto wallet, and you can, have a nickname here, and you enter the conversation, and you start controlling how the work is made. So just to give a sense of how it works, at least my rudimentary understanding here. If we look at the work closer, so again, this was on Super Rare. So a nice sale here for Super Rare. And what it looks like to me is kind of like a sci-fi work. And it's interesting. I mean, it does, so there's maybe a little bit of what you might be tempted to call AI camp. Like campiness in the sense of the color. And you do wonder, like, as we look at that website, like, I mean, maybe you're an anarchist. Like, I mean, maybe I go in there and I want to buy $10,000 of Botto tokens and want to, alter the outcome here. So there could be anarchists who are just trying to sabotage it too, one could argue. And maybe that's also a part of the larger experiment here. But again, if we had to kind of just take it as a work of art in its own right, divorced from the concept, which is probably not a good idea, but just on formal terms, kind of seems like space, sci-fi, AI, maybe some spaceships here, kind of like a balloon here. And then here, pretty clearly AI as you look down here in the shaping, and then some figures here seemingly coming out of this kind of hovercraft spaceship, maybe coming down a kind of ladder here, kind of painterly and everything. So that is the work by Botto. So Botto, of course, having an account on Super Rare. Here were some of the sarcastic replies that were all put together. Congratulations, ? Cool, ? I'm not even referring to myself when I say, imagine the amount of artwork you could buy from a real deal artist who have poured love and time into works, or even those who have put legit effort into AI collaborative works with that kind of money. Tell me it's a wash trade without telling me this space is a joke. This is horrible. So interestingly, as an artist or a cultural, someone who's paying attention to the culture of the arts, when you start seeing strong reactions like this, it does start making you wonder, like, oh, maybe something's here, is kind of what it starts to say to me. WTF, this is horrible. Because what have we seen this with? In the past, I would argue NFTs, strong reaction, which I frankly am still trying to understand what the big problem is. I think probably because it's associated with crypto and all these guys getting rich and everything. And also AI itself has gotten strong pushback and people just, against AI. So we're seeing this kind of reaction to this work here. There are things in this space that don't make sense. So this person, Phantom Scribbler, has put together, probably some of the more kind of maybe cherry-picked a lot of the comments here to put all the kind of more negative comments together. Why not buying a good art? Why this low effort? In my trash bin, I got it full of experiments like these. No wonder real art enthusiasts and collectors either left this space or are refusing to come in. Can't believe this. So no wonder why real artists are leaving the space. Is this a joke? So again, a strong reaction starts to legitimize the work in itself once you start getting a strong social reaction, I would argue. So now, again, so this is one way it was framed by Barat Cremo. Cultural art, and I assume Barat is talking about Botto here. Posting this kind of around the same time that all the news was coming out on Botto. So cultural art being more important here, being greater than sign here, art for aesthetics. And I wonder to myself, is this a false dichotomy? I just wonder to myself, based on what we were just saying here, it's not that aesthetics have disappeared. Because there's still, like, let's say, because I can, because in a sense, I'm sympathetic to some of the negative, there's something kind of campy in the colors. I'm, a little skeptical on this idea of art by committee. And it's almost like we're getting the logical conclusion of art by committee, which is, kind of campy AI art that you'll find on just Google search AI images. And then the first thing that shows up is probably going to be like stuff that you don't necessarily love aesthetically. However, again, I think the aesthetic component of this artwork, it's important to understand there's a legitimate and interesting concept behind this artwork, and that in a sense, the beauty is in the idea. And put it this way, I've long advocated that art is a kind of qualitative science at its best. And what I think we could argue here is that this is a kind of what I'd call qualitative scientific experiment. Okay, this is we're going to put these parameters together, and then we're going to hit go, and then we're going to see what happens. And maybe what we discover here is, like, perhaps what it turns into is a kind of lowest common denominator. The more people that enter the DAO, let's say, maybe it turns more and more generic, and maybe that says something about DAOs and politics. Maybe it says that DAOs aren't a great structure. Like, maybe that's a conclusion we might draw from the art. So all to say, yeah, so if you're feeling strong about it, I'd say take a step back and appreciate it for what it is, which I'd say is an experiment. And so the person, who spent the 91,000, and there's probably some big auction here. I mean, we can take a very quick look, and yeah, let's see, because sometimes you get just like one massive bid, right? So auction started by Botto, a bid of 7.69 ETH, so $17,000 and 24, and then one auction for 10. Now I thought it went for like 90 here. Let me just look at the super. So it went for 40, sold. I guess it kept going. So interesting. So anyways, it ended up at $95,000. Maybe I need to scroll through this more. It looked, oh, there it is. The bold, there it is, 95,000. But again, did this go? Okay, you know what this is? This isn't new. This is not new. This is a work from January 2022. And so I actually didn't know that. So this sold on secondary for $95,000. So someone going, there's value in this and interesting. So the first time it sold for 10 and then selling on secondary, 10 ETH, and then selling on secondary for 41 ETH. So a secondary sale. Interestingly, I didn't realize that. And it's interesting that a secondary sale, look at all the discussion that has been come alive here out of a secondary sale. I mean, it's pretty amazing, actually. Vanto, Botto Project is going places. Botto DAO, again, decentralized autonomous organization, knows this. Punk 6529 ecosystem knows this. Time for many more to enjoy Botto's artworks. Now, Barrett Cremo, who I believe put out that last tweet, my all-time favorite Botto output has been vaulted and is in Barrett's permanent collection. And I have to say, this is quite a beautiful work of art. There's something kind of semi-Salvador Dali-esque about it, but not just a really interesting artwork. So interesting piece here. So again, the provocation almost alone, the strong reaction alone, I would argue legitimizes it. Whatever we think of it from a pure taste point of view. Strange Thing. And hope Strange Thing, it looks like Strange Thing is starting to feel better here. Ever dived into Botto Project world? It's where AI meets collective touch. Picture this, a weekly canvas of 4,000 images born from AI, but shaped by community members. No single artist's hand, but a community vision guiding the brush. Art is editing, right? And as someone who does a fair amount of editing here to put this show together, this idea of editing by committee, like what you're going to get is watered down and more watered down. So I would argue maybe that's what we're seeing, but it seems but then we got that beautiful output from here. So again, maybe the experiments still need to play out. So let's continue looking at what Strange Thing is saying. Yes, Botto's pieces fetching $90,000 plus can sting some artists, especially when many artists are fighting for a spotlight in a bear market. And maybe that is part of the pushback. But Botto's magic isn't just in the art, it's in the innovative blend of tech, collective decision-making, and a forward-looking art scene that grabs Web3 investor collectors. And ultimately, it'll be interesting to pay more close attention to this whole thing. Like, it's actually captured, I knew about Botto, but I hadn't really paid too much attention. But it kind of makes me more interested because is it going to reveal, this is what I ask myself, because I'm skeptical of this idea of art or editing by committee personally. Is it going to reveal that through these, social experiments that ultimately, if we keep getting kind of campy AI, for lack of a better term, what'll that say about the DAO as an organizational structure? Which I'm actually, when I first came to Web3, I was pretty open to it, and I'm still open to it, but I'm actually quite a bit skeptical. I think we're just in the same political, situation ideologically that we were. It's all the way back to Plato, with democracies have certain functions, and it's just like a classic situation here. So in a sense that we're not, I guess what I'm trying to say is that crypto is not reinventing the wheel from with DAOs. in a sense, it's kind of taking old ideas and kind of putting new tech on top of them, I would argue. It's like a new version of, democracy, one could argue. Moreover, Botto's success signals a vibrant collector presence in 2024 with that big sale, underscoring the vitality of art in Web3. Beautifully worded, maybe with a little bit of help from AI here. Instead of casting shadows through disputes, it's imperative we shine a light on constructive pathways forward. In the traditional art world, titans like Banksy and Hirsch showcase diversity without discord. Beautifully put, let's emulate this ethos in Web3. Reducing drama and fostering solutions will not only elevate our community, but also ensure Web3's legacy as a crucible of innovation and inclusivity. And finally, solution, what if Botto could bridge the gap further? Imagine adding a blind collaboration platform to the DAO where less known and well-known artists are invited. Art is then judged purely on its merit by the DAO, with the artist name revealed only upon minting. A real meritocracy in art creation and recognition. How powerful could that be for Web3 and undiscovered talents? So interesting. So looking at maybe tweaking the experiment as well. So very kind of interesting subject matter there. So let's continue here. Kachi Kazakina, the art detective, with a really interesting observation from the traditional contemporary art world. I guess James Rosenquist, a pop artist. Undervalued pop legend James Rosenquist is having a moment. And of course, he used to be a billboard painter turned artist. And as many of you will be familiar with Rosenquist's works, and let's just look. It's something sold for a huge amount of money. The Museum of Modern Art installed Rosenquist's monumental 2011 painting, The Geometry of Fire, in its lobby this week. A big deal. Now, there's a lot of skepticism towards late Rosenquist work. I'll never forget the first time I went to Art Basel, Miami Beach, and the last time in 2012. I walked in. There was a recent, maybe something like a 2000-ish Rosenquist. I just remember some collector, in the back of my, behind me saying, Rosenquist, we don't know what happened to Rosenquist in the last 20 years, showing utter skepticism of recent Rosenquist works. So just as a little bit of context here. Upstairs is 86-foot Tour de Force F11. His work in the 60s, though, is a little more universally appreciated. So here is probably more later, maybe the 90s. So it's going up in a restaurant here. He died in 2017 and remains shockingly undervalued next to peers. I think it was the later work, actually, that did it. It's almost incomprehensible given the acclaim Rosenquist got early in his career, his solid place in everybody. He's one of the core pop artists, his prominent dealers and countless museum works. I asked a friend who's steeped in the art world to guess Rosenquist's auction record. After a brief reflection, my friend said $50 million would make sense, but Rosenquist's record is 3.3. Probably like you at this very moment, I was shocked to see this number next to his name. We're not alone. So Bill Acquavella of Acquavella Family of Dealers and the Acquavella Galleries I felt the same way. So I thought his pictures were really undervalued. I don't have an answer for that. So interesting disparity, and there's Rosenquist working. And of course, these are more, I think it's the later works that actually turned off collectors, actually is what happened here. So maybe there's a reevaluation and maybe a newfound appreciation for Rosenquist, but it's pretty interesting. Of course, I should, just in case you don't know James Rosenquist, just very quickly, this is probably my favorite. This was on the cover of The System of Objects by Baudrillard, I remember, and wonderful juxtaposition, right, in this work here. You see the relationship between pop art and surrealism in this work through juxtaposition. A car fender, a woman's face, and then some spaghetti. Just almost random psychological images in association, juxtaposed, beautifully colored here. And interestingly, you have two vertical canvases here with these horizontal lines going across them. Quite interestingly. And of course, works like this. So kind of a surrealist take on, again, a lot of juxtaposition here. A surrealist take on pop art. And again, seeing very just juxtaposition, right? The power of juxtaposition here in this work with lipstick, groceries upside down, and maybe a vacuum cleaner in a window here. So Rosenquist coming back, being seen as undervalued here. Let's continue. Nick from Gamma IO. Let's see if it comes up here from the Gamma platform on Bitcoin. It's getting so hard to keep quiet about all the things we've been quietly working on for the past 3 to 6 months on Gamma. At least 3 of them are going to be shared this month, and if done right, will kick off a giant orange tsunami of new collectors to Bitcoin. Very interesting. And there was another one here too. We've been rethinking creating, collecting, trading on Bitcoin from the ground up. Going to be a major effort, but the concepts are starting to feel so slick, somehow familiar, yet unlike anything else. Q2. So very interesting, comments here from Nick of collecting and minting on Bitcoin. Of course, that is the platform Gamma where Acid Boy was releasing work, and actually I think who else was it? And some other artists who we'll show in a future, whose name I can't remember right now. Regular Jake, Tuna Kuna. Sold my first, I can remember the names, I'm not sure which one though. Tuna Kuna. So I think this is actually a big collector according to Retro Manny. Sold my first NFT through a commission contract at 1,000% over market price. How did I do it? Through Taya.cafe new commission contract. Unlike Object, who takes shared royalties and fees out of the artist's pocket, Taya Cafe builds commissions on top of the asking price, ensuring that all parties involved get exactly what they are asking for. Cafe allows for the curator to set the price and worry about the marketing, taking a much-needed load off the artist's plate. This is the first step in a new type of economy, one with abundance and fair pay for all. How about them royalties, Retro Manny? So I went to the actual page, and I didn't actually, I'm not sure if my internet's working right now. Let me just see. I have to switch this over. As we've learned to deal with technical difficulties here on the fly. So we're using the phone here. We'll see if it loads up. We'll let that load up over a second here. And continuing on, this was also super interesting. So Zora, Claim Rewards is now gas-free for the first time for creators. I'm not sure if I mentioned this yet. I think I might have. This is too good to be true. So Zora is helping countless creators earn their first ever ETH, and now we've made it free and easy to claim. So I'm not sure if you have to have an ETH or what the deal is, or if you can have a... so very cool. Because one of the biggest hurdles with Zora was bridging back out of Zora. Costed, at least when I did it, cost something like $80, $100. So which kind of takes a big chunk out of the profits here. So turning back here to this regular Jake. So I'm not exactly sure because I see a Nuv 1914 work here. And then it links to here, which is maybe just Taya Cafe, and this is the curator. So I'm not exactly sure how it all works, and I haven't spent too much time on Taya Cafe, but very interesting. And this is also looks very promising and interesting too. Stippen Pixel here, excited, having put out a ton of work on Zora. Here's Michele Colonna, bit of a makeover with works from the gallery's artist roster ahead of the next show. So another window into Michele Colonna's gallery, Colonna Contemporary, on the outskirts of Philadelphia in the suburbs there. Just a beautiful space. And here's another look here. Just did a fabulous job. Look at how great this gallery looks. So just noteworthy there. This was quite interesting too. Kyle Flemmer. It's like community notes here with Michele Colonna, Kyle Flemmer, Bombs Over Bethlehem. So this is the third art review written by Kyle Flemmer on work. I think they've all been on Tezos so far, but the third on a basically digital artwork, this time choosing Sabato's Nativity, this very kind of powerful work that was released here, I think over Christmas, if I'm not mistaken, December 26th, the day after Christmas. So here you get a full write-up here, and so just really cool and really interesting. We've seen RJ, and look at all of this, look at all the background here. So we've seen RJ in this brilliant new work here. We've seen RJ do a little bit more criticism, and we've seen Kyle Flemmer. Someone asked me, it was an interview question, a written interview question, do you consider yourself a curator or a critic? And I was like, neither. I'm an artist that talks about art. So anyway, let's continue here. Shirley Preston. Got some bad news today that the job I have been offered has to be given to someone else because my license is taking so long to be approved. So that is a bummer. Going to do some open editions on Zora. Retweets super appreciated. When it rains, it pours. So this is Midjourney and Photopia. So we've shown a few works by Shirley Preston here with these cool kind of masks here. AI works with kind of noise in the mask. So all to say, good time to support Shirley. There's a work on Zora here. And the mints are coming in. So 4 mints. So free mint from Shirley Preston on Zora. Go help Shirley out. Here's another one, Nightcap at Noon. Again, playing with these, almost magic wand-like masks with interesting kind of digital patterns, abstract patterns in the background. With these really beautiful, Shirley Preston has been making AI for a while now, and as you can see, is getting pretty good at it. So best of luck to Shirley there. I thought this was interesting. Letterform Archive, Susan Kerr, I think an early designer for Apple, who we've looked at, who we saw a tweet from like a few months ago, or a tweet about, who I think designed some of these, was Apple's main designer, I think, or one of their main designers. I thought this was really interesting. This looks like maybe an early manual. And you see how beautifully designed it is. And this is actually what I wanted to point out, though, which is sometimes we get the impression, I think, and I've kind of had this impression that maybe this appreciation for dithering, for pixel art, is maybe something that started happening around 2000. But what's kind of interesting, just as a loose hypothesis, not saying that's true, but some people, I think Kiro sent me an article of the first pixel artists. I think they're in Berlin, first quote unquote pixel artists, who are taking it seriously as an art form. That was around 2000 or late 90s. But what we see here, to me, this designer here, Susan Kerr, it kind of shows there's an appreciation for the aesthetics of this very early on, just in the portrayal of this image here. And I thought that's noteworthy, just on a cultural front, that maybe, there was this appreciation all the way back from the people that made the tools or helped design the tools. So just an open question, not trying to say too much here. But just, I thought this was worth noting. Also, vending NFTs, Tez Vending Machine, Flexosaurus Rex, also aka the birth of pixel art. So, emerged in the 1970s with the dawn of video gaming. Limited by technological constraints, game developers embraced pixels to create visuals using tiny square-shaped masterpieces. Think classics like Pong, Space Invaders. And as computer graphics improved, so did pixel art. In the 80s, the 8-bit era gave us Super Mario Bros., Legend of Zelda. Artists honed their skills using meticulously placed pixels to create intricate characters and backgrounds. Look at how beautiful that is. It does look like a beautiful abstract here. The golden era, the 1990s witnessed a golden age for pixel art with the release of consoles like Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. With improving, you might say, graphics cards and higher resolutions, games like Final Fantasy and Sonic the Hedgehog pushed pixel art to new heights. Now, it's interesting because what I was just discussing is the question that I'm bringing up is how conscious, like we would call it pixel art, but in a sense, the question is at what point did this become, for lack of a better term, capital A art, right? When did people start going, this is capital A art? And that Mac handbook seems to suggest maybe from the very beginning, rather than say maybe the 2000s. But so just an open discussion here. I'm not trying to come with too many conclusions here. Transition to the digital age, technology advanced, pixel art transition from consoles to the digital realm, personal computers, graphic editing. And so it got integrated into indie games, web design, and even animated GIFs. At a certain point, it kind of, for lack of a better term, became retro chic, though I would argue. And here it is, nostalgic revival. And there's RJ there. Pixel art has experienced a powerful resurgence. Its nostalgic charm. So it's interesting, again, where does, when does pixel art become capital A art is basically my kind of just general question there that I ask myself when I see this. Because the video game makers, maybe they saw it as art, but were they putting out stills and then trying to print them out and sell them? Right? I would argue they probably didn't. Not that I've seen. Whereas at this point here, this is a work that's for sale, that probably sold for a lot of money, and that sort of thing. So at some point it became, for lack of better terms, for the sake of illustration, capital A art. And here's the pixel art community where we are now. So just an interesting, go check out Tez Vending Machine for the full discussion here. And this is where we are now. Where it's now this pixel art, Element Lee, this wonderful pixel artist who uses the phone, is now bridging over into the physical realm with these laser prints and or laser engraving. And here are more examples here on the cardboard. And as you see here, again, burning into cardboard, I'm not sure how the white is getting there. Interestingly, that almost looks like it's burning right through, but not really sure. Maybe it's burning through to a material that's on the other side. Not sure, but pretty interesting experiments here. Here's some more. So I believe this is with a pen plotter. And this is John Provencher. And so more just really interesting physical works here from Jean Provencher. And interesting juxtaposition, I might add, of these kind of abstract shapes down here. With the knight, what looks like a knight, and again, maybe a hat tip to video games here with the knight figure with this big sword. So interesting to see how everything blends together. Here's just a few more physical works here. Amber Vittoria. And here you see actually, interestingly, you see how it's almost outlined here. So that is interesting. And I wonder if they stay blank like that. So just really interesting piece from Amber Vittoria. I think we have another one. And so, yes, another one, GM. So of these really cool, interesting minimal gradient works here. So that is cool. Here's Bosque Grazias and doing cyanotype, which is where you'll see this kind of... I've never actually done cyanotype. I had a friend who was doing it. I almost was going to do it. It never worked out. But cyanotype workshop by Bosque Grazias. And as you'll see here, it's often, I think, photographers will use cyanotype. And it often gives this blue look. It makes physical work. So another option, if you're making digital art and trying to go physical, here's the workshop by Bosque Grazias. So as you can see, it's all blue here. So, and here, maybe a little clue on the process. Again, I've never done it. That almost looks like it was Pamelo. They're putting some... So interesting, and it gives you this beautiful physicality. They usually look pretty good, cyanotype, so maybe something to learn. Here is Helio Santos with a really interesting development here. We've seen several landscapes, again, with what looks like Helio Santos' basically modified, personally made paint plotter tool. What's super interesting about this one that screams out at me, and maybe for you too, is the orange underpainting, which is more of a classical kind of academic technique, that they would use. Remember, we were discussing how the reason why so many paintings from the 19th and 18th century look brown is because they have basically brown underpaintings or reddish, and so you start to get these, umbers. Was it burnt sienna? Is it burnt under? Raw umber? All to say, this is a classic move to put the underpainting, which gives a completely different feel to this, because I think before we just had white, if I'm not mistaken. So very interesting development here. Landscape number 3 from a new and special drop in March. So very cool there. And here's Art Matter Lab, which I think is Art Matter. And I wasn't sure, actually. Someone told me that maybe they weren't doing stuff. So I don't know exactly what's going on, but it looks like the Art Matter people, or at least the Matter Lab, and doing a kind of Mona Lisa of sorts here. And what's interesting about this is you see over at the bottom here, it looks like the inkjet is put on top of the brush strokes. But now it looks like now a third layer comes on top, which paints over top, or maybe that underneath layer with the brush strokes is still wet, and then you just bring a paintbrush over top. So not exactly sure how this is all working, even with this here, but very interesting. Let's go into the artworks at last. 54 minutes. I am going to try and make these shorter. Maybe I need to shorten this kind of front area here. So here's a beautiful work by Myth, Rocky Balboa, another brilliant addition to the to the Boxer series. What I love about this series, it kind of reminds me of Dante in the sense that it's combining fictional and real-world characters. Like, of course, in Dante, you'll have like Odysseus is in the Inferno, but you'll also, so a mythological, character. But then you'll have real people like Virgil, who is a historical figure, all kind of combined into one. What I like about, I really enjoy about this series, apart from the brilliant color and composition and general idea that Myth has put together, another thing is this mixing of fictional and non-fictional characters, kind of a subtle move, again, it's kind of one of those things afterwards seems obvious, but until it's done, maybe isn't so obvious. So just cool work from Myth. Here's another one from Katerina Create, on a roll here. And I don't think we've seen this one, the kind of the Katerina Create character there with the white wavy hair that I think she was saying reminds of my hair here, hilariously. Cool, kind of suggestive, almost like a puddle here, puddle of hair. And here, these two horse-like creatures here with polka dots on them in a desert, seemingly at night, but actually a sun is rising here too. So interesting. Maybe it's during the morning with the sun there, and so there's a bit of a surrealist slant to these works here, and again, some cacti in the desert here. So beautiful color and texture, Resting Rider, and this sold for 25 Tezos. Offer accepted and now listed for 75. Here's another one, edition of 10 for 4 Tezos, still available, Spring Awakens. And here just a nice, so putting out a lot of work, which is awesome. There's something to be said for being prolific and even releasing, not just making a lot of work, but releasing it. So another cool piece. Again, when you get on a roll, when you create that conversation in your head of making the art, like you got to run with it and just make as much as possible, because all of a sudden you start to, because one of the advantages to working fast is you start to experiment more, because you're just trying to get things done. Let's say you set these artificial deadlines, and here all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm actually going to do a completely different composition, a close-up of the head. I like flowers. Let's put some flowers. All of a sudden, before you know it, another interesting work. So very cool. Spring Awakens. Edition, again, of 10 for 4 Tezos. Let's continue here. Interesting piece by Wasteman Goldminovich. Welcome to Burger Town, population of 3. Not exactly sure who the character is, but here eating a burger with a smoked cigarette, with a cigarette here. There's a little balaclava on the cigarette there, interesting. Kind of beautifully painted, isn't it? And maybe some tattoos on the back of the hand there, maybe on the neck. And here, someone eating a burger. And again, that painterly texture here of the paint contrasting beautifully with this just straight up flat digital background here. And look at the cheese. So artfully done, someone else who's incredibly prolific here, Wasteman Goldminovich. It's all paying off as far as I'm concerned. Like, look at all these paintings, and just an interesting painting. If Wasteman Goldminovich was not so prolific, this works like this wouldn't come out, but they're very interesting paintings. I mean, so this was another one, the Vanguard Magical Mystery Tour. So I thought just a really interesting composition here. Like, it grabbed me when I looked twice. I was like, it turned my head. I thought to myself, like, this just interesting composition here. And here are maybe some members of Vanguard. There's a cigarette, maybe a different kind of cigarette. And, again, playing with mark making. You see the wash me and different kinds of digital mark making here in the graffiti on the bus. Which is also interesting. And again, this just kind of flat black in the background there. Very interesting. This was kind of fun too. So Joy Division in the Air. by PP Universal, canvas portrait of PP Universal times Islay. So maybe a collab, because this is minted by Islay. So maybe this is the title, Joy Division PP Universal. And so here is the work. And again, we see Unknown Pleasures here. And yeah, I listened to, what is it? Dead Souls. I was listening to Still just out of curiosity after that last show. Dead Souls. My God, what a track. So interesting piece here. Interesting piece here. It was in my head all weekend. Just cool painting there by, I think, Islay of PP Universal wearing a Joy Division shirt, if I'm not mistaken. Free mint on Zora. Let's continue. Jake Studios, Cries Don't Boys, so maybe a take on Boys Don't Cry, a Cure song, or Cure album, if I'm not mistaken. Interesting kind of picture in a picture here, just one time, and then some man crying here in the central screen, a brain taped on, unknown error. So again, a very kind of surreal and suggestive work. Look at this. At first they look like clouds, then you realize they're unhappy faces. Again, referencing maybe the crying, there's the crying skull, the sadness here, and maybe there's a boy, but then the man inside is crying. So again, just a ton going on. Beautiful gradient kind of sprayed at the back, at the bottom here, putting out a ton of work. I don't know how he puts out so much work. Maybe he had some like in reserve, or it can just work really fast, which always impresses. Over here, Limbo. Limbo's back, so this is great. So a new work here by Limbo, kind of going back to Limbo's roots a little bit with the sci-fi. Some of my favorite works on Object are some of those early Limbo works where there's just like a big heart. We'll go back to those. If Limbo puts out another work, we'll go back to some of those earlier works. We're already over an hour here, so we can't go, and we got to run through the rest of this show. How are we doing here? We're doing okay. So another cool kind of sci-fi, kind of Wolverine type figure here in a Limbo with a little bit of animation, this time on exchange, and selling for 0.1 Sol, 8 of 20, so selling 12. Pretty nice. Skeleton Soldier Army, so doing well on Solana there. This was put out by Santiago Ruao, the importance of having a notebook nearby, and we're discussing here asemic writing. And actually, Santiago put out a tweet there. I think it was maybe it was a retweet. I need to start showing maybe some of those retweet comments where big fan of Max Ernst. We're discussing Max Ernst and asemic writing. Santiago Ruao, a big fan of Max Ernst. And here's another one, a work in progress. So just interesting to see what's going on here. Just very cool abstract work here. New colors feel so good. Yeah, totally agree. Also some other abstracts here. Luciana Guerra. Not sure if this is a new one or not, but it looks pretty impressive. This looks physical, doesn't it? I'm not sure if it is, but it's a pretty cool looking abstract there from Luciana, posted by Luciana Guerra with a quote from Jorge Luis Borges. Ballard loved Borges, by the way. Borges. Of course, the map without a map without a territory, the central image, you might say, of the simulacra and simulation. I think we actually got, RuneTune put out a very interesting comment. We might have to go back to that on Wednesday, I think on a previous show on that. I'll look up some of those previous comments here too. Too much going on here sometimes. Let's continue. Amelia Versace, my mind has scars, my body has scars. Just more interesting abstract work. Color therapy, I think is what this is called. Interesting, abstraction here. Looking physical, isn't it? Looks quite physical, but not sure. Could be digital. I'm really not sure. Color helps the pain. Yeah, that's a whole thing. Art, actually, Noah, art therapist. Here's Santiago, of course. Goblin Core Lifestyle. So a new abstract by Santiago. So you see all the wonderful abstraction here going on. This is on Object. I brought it up on X because it's a little easier on the computer here. And of course, I follow Santiago. That is a X glitch. And so more interesting abstraction here. This has a bit of a vector feel to it. Very interesting here too. Kind of looks like smaller ones. Just great experimentation here. Again, like in the digital world, we have another tool that's natively digital, which is very easy to use. Theoretically, you have it in photography, but Transform. I mean, where you can take an old work, that exact work, and then you can just transform it. And it's tempting to think maybe, or at least taking different layers. But what's so interesting about this one is it turns into this completely different composition, especially with the wild kind of breathing. The negative space kind of makes this work in a lot of ways for me. So just interesting piece, and then kind of punctuating it with this big stroke here in the brown to kind of give it a little bit of contrast perhaps, and the blue here. So interesting work from Santiago. After the Cultural Battle, another interesting title. Here is Mumble Boy as we continue to run here. A beautiful collage between human and cake. This is an edition of 2 for 8 Tezos. So another cool digital collage here from Mumble Boy. As you can see here, not worrying about things being out of focus or maybe being a little JPEG'd out. And they look really good from a distance here too. As you can see, this kind of not quite rainbow, but kind of neon gradient in the background there. Let's continue. This was interesting. I'd never seen this artist, Social Structure by Dustin. Look at, 9,600 views. It kind of had caught a little bit of a wave there on the social media, and I thought it was just kind of an interesting work. It looks kind of physical, but maybe a digital collage, not sure. Playing with these almost desktop icons or phone icons, just juxtaposing different elements here, as we see in the little windows, kind of user interface elements, just kind of placed here and there. I thought just an interesting, noteworthy work here. Is there a title? Social Structure, enigmatic title. Here is Pamelo at the Bosque Residency. Awesome. Maybe, I'd love to see works like this. Maybe that's what Pamelo was working on in the cyanotypes. Remember we saw shapes like this? I mean, if Pamelo starts making cyanotypes, that would be wild. I imagine that's what's happening. It's Synth Pam, so just another really fun, cool work here by Pamelo Chirone. Here is Demon Ego with a cool combination here of physical and digital, and actually quite a bit of animation there in the clouds. The Desire to Hide Everywhere, cool title, edition of 10 for 10 Tezos each, half gone. And here you see it, nice kind of big pixels here at the bottom. Nice big work. And here you see this combination of physical and digital in all its glory up close here. So just more super interesting juxtaposition. You see kind of a magic wand selection here. As we take a step back and you start to see this is like a notebook composition. You look at the edges here, you look at the middle, the shadow there of the pages. But here, unambiguously GIF. So another just kind of making it look easy to combine both physical and digital by Demon Ego. Here's Francois Gamma with another interesting figure walking here in this really cool kind of, feels almost like a maybe a late 90s computer monitor ratio here. An interesting kind of blue margin and a figure kind of just taking large steps, quam dance. This is 250 edition of 21. And here are a couple more by Element Lee. So posted on Twitter, Low Cave. Actually, I think we've seen this one before as this figure here, but I'm not positive. As this figure in a cave, we may have seen this, but it's good to review here too. These great kind of horizontal pixels, kind of reminiscent of what we were seeing in Cream Safa there. Taking this square and then making other shapes with it. And here, not exactly sure what that is, but here this seems to be like a little fire. And here's another work by Element Lee, Steps, which seems like a slightly different kind of work, doesn't it? So interesting experimentation, but kind of similar to what we were seeing with that perspective work with the camera that shoots out and you see nothing around in the negative space, only what the camera sees. So interesting piece here, more experimentation as you see on the back of this stair structure here. And here we see Ugo Digi, so playing with a whole bunch of money here in a digital style, as you can see up close here with whatever digital process, made with graphics too. There you go, 1996 software. And here Daft Punk has been minted, so here's the final version. Interesting that it wasn't turned into a diptych. So doing it all in one. And here you see, again, kind of similar styling here. And a GIF and tribute to the French group Daft Punk, and 60 Tezos on secondary. Looks like it's sold out on primary there. And let's just see here. Yes, won by Akira Dice for 60. So a very popular piece. And here, Padu. I think we saw a work by Padu the other day. This is called Night. So just interesting work here. Very video game-ish, but not entirely. Again, kind of pixel art with a capital A art referencing video games. It's kind of a fuzzy line, you could argue, where, you know, and I say this for the sake of illustration here, where pixel art small a turns into pixel art capital A. It's a fuzzy distinction. Five of Pentacles. It's kind of like comics, right? I mean, comic art wasn't really considered capital A art until recently, the last 20 years. I mean, it was, sure, you could buy original art, but it was a very specialist niche, let's call it that. Now it's more widely recognized as capital A art, and maybe it was a similar dynamic. Anyway, here's Manitou with the Five of Pentacles with this gorgeous work, this gorgeous winter work here, and a stunning piece with stunning color in this almost stained glass window-esque doorway here with two cats. And this has not been listed yet, or maybe this one version was burnt. I'm sure a new one will come. And here's Stipin Pixel with Ace Bright and AI. So these are some new ones that were put on Zora, as you see here. And it looks like the AI is in the background. So interesting combination. And then it's moving, whereas then you have the static pixels over here playing with cats. So interesting work here. Taking cats and juxtaposing some AI, sustain imagination, and huddle contemplate. And here's a dog. So interesting series here from Stipin Pixel on Zora. Here is Jack Disclosure with a beautiful purple or violet that Jack Disclosure likes to use here. Great pixelation on top here, censored on the skull, so kind of a crypto art feel to it. Trinity under Substance. Just an interesting piece, and February 1st, and listed for 25 Tezos, a 1 of 1. Continuing on, Glitchtown Arcade, Earth times Power, and so again, Nintendo Glitch ROM. Nice piece here, press start button, and just kind of nicely glitched out, nice and simple. And this is 99 cents edition of 30. And here's Gogolitis, again experimenting with psychedelic animation, for lack of a better term. The invisible spectrum, I've often pondered what I would witness if I had the ability to perceive all the waves enveloping me. So interesting experimentation here from Gogolitis, and this is going to go live today at 6 p.m. Central European Time, so maybe 10 a.m. In New York and Toronto. Nicholas Baez, I thought this was an interesting move here, putting the code as the tweet. Very interesting, and there is the work. I wonder if this is the entire code. It could be, and likely is, I would guess, but I'm not an expert in these things. So no wonder, you know, again, you could mint this on Bitcoin. I mean, must be a few bytes, this text. So, you know, again, you think of generative art with just minimal code on Bitcoin. Just very interesting to think. That's what I think about. Al Crego with, again, some more kind of psychedelic looking art here. So cool black and white work. Again, kind of looks like code, doesn't it? And here, of course, the master here, Acid Boy, of psychedelic abstraction here with a new piece, an interesting minimal work here on Object with this kind of dark sphere in the middle and this white waves, linear structure kind of orbiting it. This is 10 Tezos, open edition, 5 have been minted. Not a bad result, actually. Quick 50 Tezos and more to come probably. And this is a quick look at Acid Boy's laptop. Are you ready? So a quick look at the studio here. Looks awesome. Again, I'm wondering, is this going to go on Gamma? Luis Andre Gamas, here is another interesting artist here. Through the Window, a series that explores how the speed and positioning of elements can alter our perception of colors and movements. So interesting mask here. Almost looks like code, doesn't it? The way, because this looks like a fractal. Interesting. This looks like a fractal. So this looks like mathematics here. 300 Tezos edition of 1. Very interesting. And here, we won't leave it on too long because of the flashing Elna Frederick, but I thought it was hilarious. This Nokia phone, my first cell phone. Shout out to Mom if you're watching. And there's the bricks coming through. I'm not sure if that's the phone coming out of the bricks or whatnot, but cool work. And I love just finally the 01 and the Chan links left on top there. Unknown Collector posted this, and I thought a cool work here by someone called OXKNNY. Interesting piece on Unknown Collector's curated feed there. So just a lot of stuff going on here with this flashing square in the middle, kind of dragged, sampled stuff, and more dragging over here. Interesting piece when you take a step back. And a little figure in there too, if you saw that little homunculi there. And different colors here, just interesting work. Here's Toucan with some beautifully textured analog glitch here. Origins, cool title. I love the mystery of this one. And I love the kind of bent pixelation. Like, I don't know what else to call that. Like this kind of, it's this, you know, to me, the analog video artists continue to show their merit by continuing to create new experiences for us visually. And to me, this is just another example. And it's kind of like this remix of sorts. It feels of found imagery. And all of a sudden, you know, you put it through a few processes. And, you know, it's like sampling something for a bass drum from real life, and then you process that, and then all of a sudden you have a techno track. It's kind of the equivalent of like that, I guess, there's a whole name for it, like sound sampling, of real life sound sampling. Can't remember it off the top of my head. Here's another one by Toucan. How much did that sell for very quickly? So this is 333 edition of 6. Pretty low edition, pretty reasonable. Crush on You, this is a Tezos 50. Again, a similar process here, very effective, just beautiful. Edition of 15. And here's Bosque Grazia's, and this was collected by DJ Kiro, who picked up 10 of Dino Glitch number 9 on Zora. So taking advantage of the free mints there. And here, again, just a really, really rich glitch here. Isn't there? Like when you look back here, an interesting composition too with just this dino. You just see the head. Very, very, very interesting. Here is a Doctor version here, and an edition of 15, Pyramid Scene number 15. So a new pyramid here. Again, taking each kind of shape here and using it as an opportunity to put more different kinds of, you know, analog video glitch results. And here you see this kind of, you know, rolling image in the background here. And beautiful noise at the top here. Look how huge this file is too. Let's see if we can zoom in on that again. Yeah, like look at how rich this is. So very interesting in the outlines. So beautiful work there by Dr. Version. 2 sold, 13 to go, 4 Tezos. Here's Inavare, who we've been admiring the wonderful textures that Inavare has been making in this whole, you know, area of glitch here. Here's a dog. Great work. And here's Composition 109 by Klaus, who continues to rock it here with these kind of abstract compositions, kind of modern, kind of Kandinsky-like series here. Maybe it's the titles I give that impression, but I love it. I love just, again, a very simple concept. I'm just making compositions here. You know, again, using this kind of glitch technique here. 22 Tezos, selling them for reasonable prices, 1 edition of 1, and, you know, bringing in a nice little income there. Very impressive. Here's Score. Let's see if we can play this. Pray to the internet gods here as we move in slow motion here in this. So this looks like one of those good luck or happy cats that you sometimes see in stores. My friend collects these. And here, I think we'll get a name for it in the description. So we're seeing this Score in slow motion here. Let me see if and here's just more of a feel for it. So interesting, a liquid cat, a lucky cat. Yeah, I think they're called lucky cat statue at Gotokuji Temple in Tokyo using Touch Designer and 3D scanning. So continuing very interesting work with 3D scanning there from Saiko. And here, or Score, Salawaki, Why Is She Angry? So, of course, Salawaki was on our space last week. An interesting piece here. Again, bringing in humor and what looks like either an AI or a CGI type keyboard here. Again, playing with the CGI here. So interesting. Why is she angry? So of course, a little bit of humor there. That was a great. That was a great space, and I'm going to work on getting those spaces up on Spotify. Maybe as soon as this weekend, or even sooner. Maybe this week. Here's another beautiful work here by Yoa Ian, and just another combination of AI and digital painting, and maybe even a little bit of collage, if I remember right. So just kind of surreal, this figure here, you can't tell if it's in a painting or coming through a kind of surreal space here. These very interesting figures kind of melding with these different picture planes here. See a plant and just everything. And the color and the painterly texture, just gorgeous AI painting. Movement studies, good morning. Just a study, amazingly. Vision Pro by Strange Thing. So here we have almost what looks like a retro Apple computer here with a pixelated eyes here in the screen. So a cool work here, and kind of cut into this figure here with the hoodie and this gorgeous jacket here. Gorgeously colored Nike jacket. This you could sell. So again, and then this beautiful, Renaissance art color here with this perfectly done yellows and blues. I mean, completely convincing here. And even the cracking, it's like even more beautiful than the real cracking. Continues to amaze over here. Lily Illo. This was quite interesting too, just this contorted body here with the foot becoming a hand and an echo of the image over here. It's getting pretty experimental here with these Architects in Chairs series, and this was an older work from late last year that I think I missed. A stunning work that was posted here, and look at these hands. If you're skeptical on AI artwork, check out, it's a stunning work. As you'll see here. So just, again, beautiful results here. Again, it's kind of like the artist as editor to a certain degree, as we were seeing with Botto, but instead of having a committee, it's a person, one person. And as you see here, early first AI experiments unminted, which are also quite interesting. It's quite interesting going back to your older work, and sometimes it holds up a lot better than you remember, and this is probably another example here. Interesting early AI mint here, or non-mint from Lily Illo. And look at this. This is Eiley, testing new features on MProps Open Studio, searching for textures, finding gold here. So a beautiful, another beautiful AI painting, this time by Eiley, with these stunning textures here. So using MProps. Which tends to have really, MProps, Stable Diffusion has some sort of textures they're making. We often see in Skamra's work. Just beautiful work there from Eiley. Here's Kenexapida, and this is Fridays Are Days of Experimental Sound. And yeah, a brilliant juxtaposition here, almost like a Monet painting in the background. What are they called? Water lilies. And then almost like a 19th century Japanese woodcut with some interesting mark making over top. And then with what looks like a AI sound studio, mixing board and everything, but not exactly as you'd expect. Rendered with AI. Very interesting work from Kenix Zapata, one of the most experimental artists, I'd argue, in the whole AI ecosystem. Speaking of experimental, here's Sabato with a new Autotopia work here. And here you see a figure in front of all his cars with kind of gaudy looking spray paint over top, or airbrush. So another interesting, beautiful addition from Sabato, hilarious addition to the Autotopia. And here's Mo SHIT, 26,000 views. So another big hit here for Mo, 174 retweets, 1,000 likes on this, on this AI artwork of kind of stitched together here. You have people on computers and different, almost video game-esque tropes. Here you have what look like little angelic figures, interesting design on top, being super duper prolific. And here as well, I had no idea what this was. This is by Mo as well. It's called 1574. Not sure, there's no information here. I assume it's an AI artwork. Pretty interesting piece. Beautiful, tripping. I mean, if this is AI, I can't tell the difference anymore. Like this, because I'm not seeing your classic AI characteristics, right? Like I'm not looking super close here. But is that AI? It doesn't look like AI. So I'm not sure what that is. Very interesting work. Here's Little Cakes on Zora. So Little Cakes going multi-chain here. And 100 minted already. So that is pretty awesome. This was put out January 25th. Don't think we've seen this one. And maybe there's Little Cakes doing a little disco number here. AI artwork, kind of a fun ghost figure. So interesting work here from Little Cakes on Zora. And again, 100 minted so far, which is pretty awesome. And also here, Little's Alive. So this is also Little Cakes, this time on Object. And let's see if this plays. So no volume here, so no audio. So interesting canvas ratio, just more interesting AI video, I suppose we'd call it, AI art video. Little's Alive, created using MProp's Open Studio and combining that with video. And Pika Labs, which I haven't even heard of. So it continues to be interesting. Here's Anna Dart with new work, which is exciting. So February 2nd, we haven't seen a ton of Anna Dart's work. Vision Pro is the name, for about a year. So it's great to see new work here. And again, doing the kind of brush strokes on top of the figures here, kind of distorted figures, really cool series here. So this is on Foundation and buy now for 1 ETH or reserve of 0.66. And here's 0009 with what I think is a AI series here, AI photographic series here. As you see with the NIIKE, like this looks like AI for sure. But again, it's getting quite convincing, isn't it, as photography? So pushing the limits here. I assume this is the new Midjourney, like Midjourney 6. Not positive on that, though. Pretty interesting experimentation. GM. As we go into the physicals here and run in the last few minutes here, Bondozo Bandito. So again, we've looked at a ton of this work. Kind of reminds me of that Rauschenberg with the broom that's nailed to the canvas and then the broom is used to brush across. Doesn't that just scream that Rauschenberg work? So again, super prolific, and with that prolificness comes greatness, really. And we see it with Bondozo Bandito. I mean, looking like he's putting out 2 massive paintings a day, maybe more. If you can't win them, don't join them. Constantly working here. And again, that great style of the airbrush with the kind of strong paint negative space in a bright color. Here is Martin Bruce with a painting here posted to Instagram, 30 by 40. I think that's oil on canvas. It is. Painting cover of the new album, Rust in the Mirror. And almost looking like a tombstone here with light coming out. Or maybe that's a mirror with the sun. Hard to say, suggestive, but very cool and beautifully textured physical artwork from Martin Bruce. And here's Rune Christensen, late September. Continuing to push the limits of Rune's art here. And beautiful on the top and the bottom here too. Almost has a bit of an AI feel in the composition there. And this beautiful orange stripe at the bottom has a real sense for color and composition here. 120 by 90 centimeters. Oil, spray paint, acrylic, and oil pastel on canvas for the show in London with Christian Hillardy Gallery. Kate Mary Art. We've looked at Kate Mary Art's work before, but not for a while. Here was an update. Just a really cool kind of Instagram artists that you find on Instagram with these kind of Matisse-like compositions. Really just great illustrator. And here, I'm not sure if we saw this work before, but I thought it was interesting and worked with the flowers. Primitive RE, GM with some flowers, abstract bouquet. So this looks, I think, like a physical, but it could be AI. It's getting harder to tell, interestingly. And back to Christian Hillardy Gallery, the superheroes we've been looking at. Here's the install. So looking pretty nice here. You see tons of space here, and this is in Palm Beach. So they have a nice big space in very rich West Palm Beach. Pretty impressive. And this is hilarious. Kevin Ford, brilliant painting here by this artist here. There's the leash of this little fuzzy dog, and there the tongue is almost radioactively bright there. And finally, we have Quampa, mixed medium on A4. So playing with A4. And of course, remember Quampa from the Microsoft Paintworks. those epic works that were on verse. So there is some physical work, and here is Walk with some shoes. So just a ton of art coming out here, as you can see, and commentary in the last like 3 days. And this is brilliant too. One of my favorite pieces, crochet cigarettes here. And they actually come out of the package here. Pretty fun art, textile crochet art here. And I think Easy Reeves, I'm not sure who the artist is, but maybe it's Easy Reeves. So brilliant work there. Anyways, that is everything. Hopefully I see you at the Spaces on Wednesday. I'm probably going to try and put out the show beforehand. Let's see. Play it by ear here on Wednesday. Until then, take care.